Apple is known for its exciting and surprising announcements whenever it unveils a new technology or an entirely new product such as the iPod or iPad. Contextually, last year, and exactly at its annual developer conference, Apple unexpectedly announced that it had already begun designing and manufacturing its own processors for Mac computers. To clarify, this announcement is important not just for technical experts or Apple products fans, but for everyone with no exceptions. So today we decided to make this video to highlight this matter and to reveal why Apple chose to manufacture its own processors. For many years, Apple has been importing its Mac processors from Intel. This great relationship between Apple and Intel began in 2006. The first Mac processors from Apple appeared for the first time in November last year when the company announced the MacBook Air and M1 and Mac Mini with M1 laptops. The thing that makes this new Apple processor interesting is that it's based on the ARM architecture, which is completely different from the Intel x68 architecture. However, there is no doubt that you are wondering about the differences between them. Well, technically, ARM uses what experts call reduced instruction set computing, while Intel's x68 architecture uses what's called complex institution set computing. To make it easy for all loyal readers, the Intel x68 architecture is more complex compared to the ARM architecture, so the performance of the ARM architecture at the mathematical level is lower than the x68 architecture, which contains more instructions. On ARM processors, this lack of processing power should be compensated for by designing highly efficient applications and software, but hey, the ability of Intel processors to perform more mathematical operations doesn't make them more powerful, because it needs a lot of the power to do that job. And this explains why its computers always need those noisy fans which consume energy continuously. Thus, this is the reason why ARM processors are often found in portable devices such as smartphones with small screens and limited battery life. However, thanks to improvements in both hardware and software, ARM processors also provide a high performance close to Intel's processors, and we have seen this in recent iPhones and iPads, which offer a similar performance to Mac computers with Intel processors. As a result, Apple is now convinced that it's time to bring ARM processors from mobile devices to PCs, but why did Apple decide to make this move? Well, since the ARM and x68 architectures work in completely different ways, designing an app for one of those architectures means that the app won't work on the other. Therefore, the application you use on your iPad will not work on the Mac unless you use an emulator. But this can cause decrease in performance and speed. So now, after Apple has started using ARM processors in both its mobile devices and personal computers, Mac users will be able to enjoy more flexibility while switching tasks between their devices. And this kind of uncomplicated and user-friendly experience is exactly what makes millions of users around the world admire Apple products. Moreover, the low power consumption of ARM processors makes Apple computers with the new Apple M1 processor last for prolonged periods, in some cases up to 20 hours. Furthermore, Apple says that relying on ARM processors such as the Apple M1 processor in personal computers will lead to thin and powerful devices at the same time, since ARM processors don't require additional hardware required by computers with Intel processors such as cooling fans. The new ARM processors from Apple will also be the reason for personal computers to have the modern neural network units, which are the necessary processing units for technologies such as machine learning technology that will make many tasks such as photo and video editing work better. Similarly, tasks that require the same method as the human brain to analyze and process information will work better. For example, recognizing speech within the digital assistant Siri or extracting all pictures of cats from your photo gallery. Regardless of the user experience, other reasons encouraged Apple to abandon Intel processors and adopt ARM processors. Apple is the most valuable company in the world because it does a lot of things on its own, from developing its own operating systems to creating secondary accessories like like the mouse. This kind of integration allows for optimizing its processor designs. Now, Apple can abandon Intel's architecture, goals, and logistical timetables. Apple will also be able to create the next generation of the thin personal computers that we mentioned earlier, in addition to the advanced versions of the Mac OS system, and this will lead to more software and applications that are deeply integrated with different Apple products. Apple CEO Tim Cook has previously mentioned that the long-term strategy of having and controlling the core technologies is the foundation of the company's products. For its part, Intel has been struggling for a few years, and in November 2019, the executive vice president responsible for sales and marketing at Intel, Ms. Mitchell Johnston Hutsos, had to apologize to the companies after Intel was late in supplying their processors. Not just that, but it no longer has the power to keep up with the competition. When Apple decided to manufacture its new Apple M1 processor using 5nm technology, Intel struggled to manufacture processors even with 7nm technology. The 5nm technology allows Apple to make its processors smaller, faster, and more energy efficient. According to some reports, the Taiwanese company TSMC, which supervises the manufacture of Apple processors, has already begun to develop a 2nm manufacturing technology that will be popular in the next decade. The bad thing about Apple's moving to ARM processors is that its applications, originally designed to work with Intel processors, will not work on ARM processors. However, Apple has already started working with major software companies to redevelop its own applications for ARM processors, such as Adobe Photoshop and Microsoft Office applications, and to run other applications, it is possible to use the Rosetta emulator, although there will be a slight decrease in performance and speed. Tech experts say that ordinary consumers won't notice a huge difference after switching to ARM processors, but experts and professional users may want to wait a bit before buying a Mac computer with Apple processors to make sure that the Apple M1 processor can deliver the same performance as Intel processors. In a nutshell, Apple decided to manufacture its own processors to free itself from Intel's problems and its dependence on it. At the same time, this step would allow the company to make its products and software more integrated, as well as making its devices thinner, more resilient, and more easy to use. These are the things that made a lot of people admire Apple products in the first place.